I was just talking with a new SDR about to start her first day on the job at Oracle. And she was telling me, I don't know if I'm cut out for sales. How do I know if I'm gonna succeed? And that's a question that pops in the head of everyone when they start out in sales. There's a lot of ambiguity. And it is a grind. It's not an easy career path. I was feeling that same way when I started out at Oracle 10 years ago. But this video is going to tell you a bunch of tips that I would have told my former self 10 years ago to give me peace of mind that I got this, I can do this, and I am gonna hit the ground running. So let's dig into these tips and get you ready to accelerate and launch your career to maximize this amazing path that's gonna open up financial freedom, great connections, and skills that are gonna amplify anything you want to do from a career perspective and in your life tomorrow. My first tip is to remind yourself that you were hired for a reason and to connect the day-to-day grind and the current role with a powerful future vision that is clearly defined and emotionally compelling. Without a clearly defined, compelling vision for your life and strong reasons why you're doing the work you're doing, sales is gonna suck. There's no getting around it. You have to pick up the phone and call strangers to interrupt their day who really don't want to talk to you. That's uncomfortable. You have to do daily activities that are not sexy, they're not exciting over and over and over. And you have to reach out to prospects for months on end where you might not even get a response. You're only going to be willing to put in the work needed to succeed, and you're only going to last if you do have an emotionally compelling vision. So ask yourself, why am I going to put in the work? Who am I doing this for? Not just yourself, but maybe it's your mom who gave you everything in life and you just want to give back to her. You want to buy her a nice house. You want to have great vacations with her. You want to build a great life for your family. Create something emotionally compelling that's not just for you, but even extends beyond you. And as you take the time to define your vision, give it some love. Visualize it, see it, feel it, taste it, smell it, touch it. Picture that future dream home in California. You're on the beach, sand in your toes. You're watching the sun set in the ocean. Picture hearing the seagulls, biting into your favorite food on the beach. You get the point. When you feed your subconscious brain visual imagery, sensory data, the subconscious brain gets in alignment with the conscious brain and brings your dreams into reality. And beyond creating a vision that is bigger than the suck, that transforms a cold call that you're terrified of, that feels like a chore into something that you have to do, you also want to expand your time horizon. Think long term. The grind you're putting in today is only temporary. Eventually you're going to move up to AE, probably within a year, which isn't as long as you think. Time flies. Then you're going to have more freedom. You're going to have SDRs setting meetings for you. Eventually you're going to be moving up into enterprise sales, closing monster deals. You're going to be traveling to meet customers, hosting dinners if that's the path you choose to go down. You might find yourself in the back of an Aston Martin, wind hitting your face after a great round of golf with a CTO that you've built a personal relationship with. That's what happened to me. You might find you meet the love of your life through tech sales. That happened to multiple of my friends. And you might find you eventually end up on a different career path, just like my lawyer or a therapist I know who both started in sales. You can know with confidence that the skills you're developing today as an SDR and as you grow in your sales career are going to be worthwhile and are going to serve you and amplify whatever you do from a career perspective tomorrow and will actually improve your broader life. You can use this path to create financial freedom, to make a bigger difference for yourself and others and have the experiences you want to have. You can build connections, you can develop skills, and you can become more of a badass along the way, more confident, more empathetic, and more influential than ever before. So I hope you're fired up about this path and you realize the suck today is gonna help you create an amazing life tomorrow. Squeeze the juice out of this opportunity, and let's get to tip number 2, which is about messaging. When it comes to building your messaging as you start out as an SDR, do not freak yourself out with being overwhelmed with product knowledge. Don't overcomplicate it. Take the tech out of tech, as my first Oracle mentor used to say, who would make $1 million a year and would flash his W-2 to prove it. Shout out to Steve DeFusco, but he told me, focus on business outcomes. Focus on the business problems that your solution solves and the people impacted by those problems, the people that care. Who are the end users using the technology on a day-to-day basis whose lives you're going to make easier? Who are the middle managers and directors who are impacted by the solutions because their people are impacted and their broader organization is positively impacted? Who are the C-levels that make the decisions on the technology and hold the purse strings, the budget, to actually move forward and execute the order form? So forget about the products. Focus on the problems that your company and your solutions solve, and get really good at telling stories around how you solve those problems. The second aspect of great messaging is finding social proof in the form of case studies that you can often find on the company website or by poking around your internal resources that highlight business problems being solved. I was working with an SDR at Oracle who has a mining company and he also has a technology company. So I told him, find a case study for a similar mining company to share with the mining company, and find a case study with a technology company to share with the technology company. And when you read the case study, figure out what were the business outcomes produced and figure out who is being quoted in the case study. And then when you reach out to the mining company, reach out to the people that were quoted in the case study, those types of roles, with the messaging that is emphasizing the problems that were solved for that similar company. Maybe he reaches out to the mining company and says, hey, Tim, my name is Chris and I'm calling from Oracle. By the way, I appreciate your investment on the NetSuite side of the house. I'm reaching out to expand our partnership on the data analytics side. And we actually helped an oil and gas company like yourself. They were struggling with their operations and managing their capital. And by implementing our data analytics solution, they were able to reduce the time spent on resolving issues by XYZ amount, save hundreds of thousands of dollars. Honestly, I'm talking out of my you-know-what right now, but you reference a relevant company, similar size, similar to them. You highlight a business problem and an impact produced, like saving money, saving time. And then you might say, we'd love to see if we can produce similar results for you. Do you have any availability next week to meet the team? Your account executive actually speaks with a lot of customers like yourself, and I know it'll be a great conversation. That wasn't the perfect scripting and messaging, but ultimately, when you read case studies, you can reach out and lead with problems and share some social proof that will hook the customer to want to learn more. Because there's a concept in psychology called the proximal peer that says that people want to do what their peers are doing. So an oil and gas company will want to do what maybe another oil and gas company is doing. And if they're solving a specific problem with your technology, they might be interested to try and do the same. By the way, a quick note on business value, because you do want to speak the language of business outcomes to executives. That's all they care about. They don't care about features and bells and whistles. You want to remember that business value comes down to a few things. And I actually got this from a business value architect back in my Oracle days. 1, driving top line revenue. 2, expanding market share. 3, reducing cost. 4, reducing risk. And 5, saving time. And by reducing time, you can reduce cost. Because when you save a certain amount of hours for an employee, you can factor in their hourly rate, their salary, and figure out a cost savings associated with the time savings. It's our job as a seller to connect the dots between our solution and the business outcomes that our solution produces. How does our technology help drive revenue, expand market share, reduce cost, reduce risk, or save time? That's all executives really care about at the end of the day. And maybe they want to see some social proof on how you delivered those business outcomes for similar customers like them. The final fundamental aspect of messaging is making sure that you prepare some differentiators that highlight how you solve the business problems you solve better than the competition. The prospects you're reaching out to probably have what's called an incumbent solution, especially if you're in a mature market at a big enterprise tech company like Oracle, Google Cloud, AWS, Salesforce, Dell, companies like that. The prospect you're reaching out to probably is content with their solution. They're happy with the status quo. You need to be ready to highlight how your solution is different and why that differentiation matters from a business perspective. My first cold call when I was at Google Cloud was to the CTO of OfferUp. And it turns out he said exactly what I expected him to say. I knew he was on AWS, our competitor who was leading us in the market. They had much more market share and in fact invented the cloud market. And he said, we're all set on AWS. We're actually happy. Fortunately, I had looked at the data at Google Cloud at the time to see why customers would move from AWS to Google Cloud. And based on that data, there were a couple differentiators like global expansion, if that was important to a company. Google Cloud had a differentiated approach to global expansion, and it had to do with how the network was set up, and that would make the difference on whether a company like OfferUp was able to provide a good user experience and actually capture market share, or if they fell flat and missed out on opportunity and eroded market share, and the competition actually might beat them out. And that was an example of a differentiator that I had found doing some research. And when Arian, the CTO, challenged me and said, we're all set, I was able to say, I hear that a lot. I work with a lot of companies that are running on AWS, but what I've seen based on the data is a lot of these companies that value global expansion as a key part of their strategy have turned to us because we have a different approach, blah, blah, blah. And I shared some of that differentiation and I made it concrete. And then Arian said, you know what? Follow up in a few months. We're going to have a new CTO taking over. I'm moving to the board. And in that moment, I earned enough trust to follow up, and I did, and I got the meeting, and I was able to name drop. Arian suggested I reach out in the subject line, and that led to a fruitful conversation with the new CTO, and eventually a $10 million deal over 3 years with OfferUp. So not only did I understand business problems we addressed related to global expansion, but I was able to highlight differentiation and why that might matter. My next tip is when you start out as an SDR, don't feel like you need to reinvent the wheel. Don't feel like you need to figure it out on your own. Remember, the best artists steal, and so do the best sellers. So find a top performer like an account executive who has crushed it as an SDR and got promoted and is crushing it in the AE role to model after. Listen into their calls. Have conversations with them to ask them, how do they approach outbound? How do they message? How do they pitch? How do they run discovery calls? And take notice of what you like, what works, and replicate what they do to produce your own positive results. And over time, after you imitate, you're eventually going to be able to innovate on what you imitate and make it your own and throw in your own authenticity and your personality and your own special sauce. But it all starts with finding a top performer and not worrying about reinventing the wheel, but simply doing what they do to produce results. Success in sales is actually quite simple, and by modeling after someone who's good at the thing, it makes life a lot easier. My next tip for you is to dive headfirst into the deep end. Take massive action. Don't wait until you feel like you're ready to start making cold calls, because you'll never be ready. Just start making cold calls. You don't read about how to ride a bike when you're a kid. You get on the bike, you probably fall and scrape your knee and pick yourself up, and you try again, and eventually you start riding. It's the same thing with cold calling and prospecting and sales in general. Get on the bike and start riding. Pick up the phone and start smiling and dialing. And give yourself permission to fail, because you will fail. You will stumble and fall. Things will be awkward, but live in that awkward and know that there is no failure, just learning. You're gonna screw up. In fact, I've screwed up multiple times in this video, by the way. My audio wasn't working at first when I started recording, and after 15 minutes I had to restart. And then my battery died on my audio after that, after 15 more minutes, and I had to restart. But I'm gonna keep going because this message is important. I want you to succeed as an SDR and get promoted and accelerate your trajectory, and nothing will stop me from getting this message to you. It doesn't matter if it's imperfect, but I'm here for it. And you think the same way with tech sales. I'm getting amped up. Like, just go for it. Go for it. Learn and improve over time. I'll never forget Ryan, my SDR during my Google Cloud days. He joined the team and started picking up the phones early and often. And at first, his calls were pretty rough. He was stuttering, he was getting hung up on a lot, but he kept pushing through and he kept relentlessly making calls. And suddenly, a transformation occurred. And Ryan got really smooth, he got really good, and he got to a point where he could push through 3 objections in a row and set the meeting, which, by the way, side note, I encourage you to push through objections up to 3 times after that, maybe let him go. But isn't that incredible? Ryan went from stumbling all over himself and getting rejected all the time and failing to crushing cold calls and becoming Ryan the Lion. He gained that reputation because of his bravado and confidence and success, and he ended up training people at Google Cloud. And to this day, he's one of the best SDRs I've ever known. Start making a lot of calls early and often. Make more calls than you're expected to make, because high call numbers, high outbound touches, reaching out to prospects across channels, including cold email and LinkedIn as well, will produce results. And eventually, quantity will lead to quality, and you'll produce more positive results with less outbound touches. But the one thing you can control is your effort and your attitude, and smile and dial and push it and get those numbers up, baby, to start out. My next tip for you is don't come out of the gate expecting immediate results. Don't expect that you're going to write the most perfect, tailored, value-driven cold email and get a meeting. No matter how good your first email is, you will almost always never get a meeting off your first cold email. I remember at Google Cloud, a customer engineer on my team wrote a cold email that was so tailored, so beautifully written. It was incredible. It was relevant to this prospect, and it was really good. And crickets, no response. And the customer engineer was quite surprised. And I thought to myself, welcome to sales. Don't expect immediate results. The first email, the first call, the first LinkedIn connection request, which, by the way, you should hit them from all angles and multi-thread, diversify your outbound just like you diversify your investment portfolio. That's just the beginning of what could be months and months of outreach. But play the long game. Be pleasantly persistent. Maybe when you start out, hit them with a cold email, a LinkedIn connection request referencing your cold email. Make a cold call that's now turned into a warm call because you sent an email and a LinkedIn connection request. And maybe you're like, hey, Tim, this is Chris calling from Oracle. I'm curious, did you get my email by any chance? Boom, it's warm. And that's just the beginning. And maybe send a follow-up email a couple days later and a couple days after that. Maybe if you don't hear anything after that first cadence, you give them a little space and you follow up every week, maybe 1 or 2 times. But just know that the follow-ups fuel the finances, and you want to stay pleasantly persistent. What that means is when you follow up, you never get discouraged or upset. Don't show that to the customer. That's unprofessional. They owe you nothing. Don't get upset, but just stay positive. And show them your commitment to reaching out to them, and just be the squeaky wheel that says, hey, I'm here. I help customers like you solve these problems, and they will know to come to you at the right time. The first deal I ever closed at Oracle was when I was an SDR, and that deal actually changed my career. I reached out to a database administrator, I think at Palmetto Healthcare. It was a good-sized healthcare company, and no response for 9 months. But eventually, radio silence turned into the rocket fuel that catalyzed my career when that database administrator responded with a multi-6-figure opportunity. I closed that deal when my account executive was actually out of office. He was at a bachelor party, and I was really happy he was, because I was able to close the deal with his manager, and I hung my hat on that deal to get promoted to account executive, a great patch in national tech named accounts at Oracle, where I covered big accounts like AAA and SunGuard Availability Systems and Chubb Insurance. And the rest is history. It changed my career. It got me to Google. A YouTube channel started. Imagine if I stopped one touch point short. Imagine if I wasn't persistent. That database administrator wouldn't have known to reach out to me at the right time. So a key determinant of your success in sales and in life is your ability to play the long game and be relentlessly, irrationally persistent, even in the face of no results in the present moment. You got to be able to keep going. And eventually your success, if you can keep going, is guaranteed. My next tip for you is focus on the right outbound targets. Not all prospects are created equal. Now, if you're in an enterprise territory and you have 5 accounts or 20 accounts, then it's pretty clear that you want to hit all of them. But if you're in a territory with many accounts, then focus on the prospects that are going to be most profitable. Maybe that's determined by the number of employees if you have a solution that's licensed based on employee count. Maybe that's determined by how much cloud infrastructure a company has, and there's certain factors you can figure out to determine what will make a high potential client in that space. What's funny is in cloud computing, SaaS companies are running on cloud on the back end, and they spend a lot of money. So that specific industry is a good one to focus on. And a SaaS company might not have as much revenue as a traditional enterprise company, but because they run on cloud, they might actually spend more. And so it just depends on your solution and how the pricing model works. But based on that, you can figure out who are the profitable targets. And you want to avoid the minnows, the small prospects that are a waste of time, that aren't going to move the needle, right? Because if you're setting meetings with minnow accounts for your account executives, they're going to feel like it's a waste of time, and they're not going to be happy with that. They're going to be annoyed. They want to focus on the top targets, and by the time you get promoted to account executive, you want to flex that muscle of being able to prioritize the right targets that are profitable and worthwhile. Also, it goes without saying, but you don't want to set a meeting with the janitor. You want to set a meeting with the right personas that can make decisions on the technology, or at least are influencers impacted by the technology that could get you to the right decision makers. Focus breeds success in sales and in life. So focus on the right targets and hit them relentlessly, playing the long game, as we talked about before. My next tip for you is really important and effective, and it's going to help you accelerate your ability to get meetings faster. Manufacture warmth and familiarity when you reach out to prospects. That might be creating a personal touch based on your research on someone's LinkedIn profile. When you discover they went to your alma mater, your university, maybe throw that in the subject line. Call it out in the first line of the body of the email. If you have a common connection, ask that connection if they can make a warm introduction, or maybe name drop them in the case that they actually know that person and you have a mutual connection that's relevant. If you're selling at a big tech company like Oracle, I tell Oracle SDRs this all the time, figure out if your target prospect, especially if they're an enterprise customer, has invested in other aspects of the Oracle business. Maybe they invested in NetSuite and you're selling a data analytics solution. And you could reach out and say, hey, Tim, this is Chris calling from Oracle. First off, I wanted to thank you for our partnership on the NetSuite side. And by the way, between you and I, imagine you're selling analytics and you're not paid on NetSuite, but you're using it to create a warm synergy. So you say, thank you for our partnership on the NetSuite side, and I'm reaching out to expand our partnership on the data analytics side. We actually helped another customer like yourself in your industry leverage our data analytics platform to drive operational efficiencies by 60% and save hundreds of thousands of dollars in the process. I'm curious, do you have 20 minutes next week to talk with our account executive on what we're seeing in the industry and if we can produce similar results for you? That's an example of manufacturing warmth if you're at a big company. Now, I got to tell you, when it comes to familiarity and warmth, the fastest ways to get meetings. This next strategy is incredible, and I actually advised a CEO at a $5 million in revenue company. And I worked with his SDR, and she had gotten 1 meeting in a handful of months, and this helped her get 4 meetings in 1 week. It's the classic closed lost campaign. First, you go into your company's CRM and you look for past opportunities that were closed lost. Prospects were evaluating the solution, but the deal ended up dying for some reason. You find the relevant contact, confirm they're still at the company, and then you reach out and you say something like this. Hey, Tim, this is Chris calling from Oracle. I'm just doing some quality control over here. I noticed that you were evaluating XYZ solution in the past, but you didn't move forward. And I'm curious, did we do anything to turn you away? And then you listen, and the prospect might say, oh, Chris, you know what? It was just bad timing. And then from there, you can try and reopen the opportunity. Tim, I get it. It was bad timing in the past, and I'm just curious, what previously motivated you to evaluate the solution in the first place? By asking this question, you can re-agitate the original drivers from a business perspective, the original pains, whatever motivations they had to look at the solution, And you can see if you can reignite the spark and if now is a better time. And you can use their motivations to be a hook to set the meeting and re-explore the opportunity. Tim, I appreciate you sharing that with me. You were originally evaluating the solution to save money, and there was a feature capability that we didn't quite have at the time, but you know what? Things are changing constantly over here, and we've really been innovating, so I'd love to set up a conversation to revisit things and talk about the latest results we're producing, how the product has evolved in the future roadmap, and I know it'll be a great conversation. Our account executive talks to many customers like yourself and is aware of all the latest updates. So are you free next week, Tuesday at 3 p.m.? Something like that. Reopen the opportunity and go for it. It's amazing. This campaign, this close loss campaign, is the most powerful one there is. There's no way to get quicker meetings that actually then convert to revenue than this. And one final low-hanging fruit to leverage familiarity to your advantage and get meetings faster is to reach out to warm leads who engaged with marketing materials. Maybe they downloaded a white paper on your latest security solution. Maybe they attended an event or visited your website and your marketing team is keeping up with this engagement. And then you can reach out to those warm leads and say something like this. Hey, Tim, I noticed based on our records that you downloaded one of our white papers, and I just want you to know that I'm a part of the team that's dedicated to supporting you as you explore our technologies and how they could benefit your business. And I'm curious, would it be helpful to hop on a conversation with some of our resources like our account executive and maybe even a customer engineer to talk through what you're hoping to achieve and your interest? You could say something like that, but leverage their interests that you're aware of based on their engagement with marketing collateral or going to an event and offer to be of service and to help them in the exploratory process. One thing that prospects really appreciate is free education, and that's something that you're always positioned to bring to the table. My next tip for you is to start building your network from day one, knowing that all opportunities are tied to people. We're talking job opportunities, opportunities to meet with customers. Drop it! Drop it! We're talking job opportunities, opportunities to meet with customers, and even personal opportunities. Building your network starts with the people closest to you within the context of your company. Build a great relationship with your manager. Build great relationships with account executives. Build relationships with customer engineers, business value architects, other resources at your company, marketing, product, you name it. Reach out to people. Be curious about them and their path to success, their life story, what makes them tick, their values, their family. Because curiosity, as we talked about earlier, is the key to being the most interesting person in the room and in any conversation. And being curious is very generous. And speaking of being generous, find ways to contribute to everyone you interact with. Simple ways you can contribute to anyone at any time is by listening, by acknowledging them in the conversation, appreciating something about them and who they are and what they stand for. You can also contribute to people by asking directly, is there anything I can do for you? That should be an ongoing question you always ask yourself. How can I contribute to this person? Maybe based on your LinkedIn profile, you notice that they have a cause that they care about and they're raising funds for that cause. Maybe you could throw them $5 to give to the cause. You don't have to give them $100 million. If you're talking to your account executive, you can directly contribute to their ability to make money by setting qualified meetings for them that convert to pipeline and revenue. Talk about a way to build trust and build a relationship. Within the context of a relationship, when you consistently take care of people, which means putting their needs before your own, and make it happen, which means saying you're going to do something and then delivering on that promise. You build trust, you catalyze a relationship, and you create personal walking ambassadors in your lives that are parading around the world championing your best interest, who are willing to have your back and take care of you in return. Take this mindset to take care of people and make it happen and bring it out into the LinkedIn world. Take advantage of that platform, send personal connection requests to people that are in your peer group, maybe SDRs at other companies, account executives at other companies, and even send connection requests to mentors who are further down the path and are where you want to be. When you send a personalized connection request, maybe you flatter something you appreciate about them. You call out something in common. Maybe you went to the same university or care about a similar cause. And just share that, hey, I'm looking to build connections with like-minded people and build long-term relationships. And if there's ever anything I can do for you, I'm committed to doing that. Send simple, authentic messages like that, and your connections will spread like wildfire. And eventually you start celebrating those people's posts and building familiarity that way. And then maybe you even create content that's helpful to the broader LinkedIn community. You don't have to have arrived in your career to start creating helpful content. Just share authentic stories and lessons learned from your experience, getting out in the sales arena or from mentors further down the path. And share humbly, not pretending to be someone who's arrived, but admitting, hey, I'm still learning, but here's what I'm learning, and people will appreciate that. Eventually, you're gonna be seen as a contributor to the LinkedIn community, and you're gonna create a demand generation engine for yourself where leads might very well be finding you. And we're not just talking about leads for the product you're selling, but leads for you in any products or business that you try and champion in the future. Playing the LinkedIn long game and building a robust LinkedIn network, becoming a LinkedIn legend over time is gonna be your ultimate superpower to help you make it rain when it comes to opening doors to job opportunities and opportunities to find new customers. There is no faster way to get a meeting than the warm referral. You might reach out to me and say, hey, Chris, I noticed you're connected with a CTO at XYZ company. Do you know him well enough to make an introduction? And I say, yes, of course, I can make an introduction. And then I go to that CTO and I say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. CTO, I've got a friend in my network who works for XYZ company, and they help companies like you solve this specific problem. I'm not sure if this problem is something that's top of mind today, but if it is, I encourage you to take a meeting with them, and I'm happy to set one up if you'd like that. No pressure, but thought I'd float this out your way. Because of the relationship I have with the CTO, they're probably gonna accept that meeting, and you essentially borrowed the trust I have with the CTO to accelerate getting in the door with a future client. My next tip for you is, as a new SDR starting out in tech sales, don't be discouraged that you don't know as much as the C-level executives that you're reaching out to. Use your not knowing, your lack of knowledge to your advantage. What I mean by that is when you come in with a beginner's mind and you're not stuck in your ways thinking you know it all, you're actually able to better put yourself in the prospect's shoes. You're able to be curious and ask questions to understand their current situation and not assume. I will tell you, when I was at Oracle, one time I came out of a cybersecurity training. There were some features that added on to our Oracle database that helped with data encryption and masking. And I thought I was super cool and savvy coming out of that training and so knowledgeable. I was a genius suddenly on cybersecurity. And I called a chief information security officer, very confident and ready to go. And he answered, and I talked his ear off about all of our features and capabilities and what I knew about cybersecurity. And guess what he did? He hung up on me. That product knowledge got in the way of me focusing on the prospect and checking in and asking a question to understand their current state and get them talking rather than me word vomiting all over them. It can actually be a strength to come from a place of not knowing and simply being curious to understand their pain points, and then doing your best to align the right resources to help them explore how you can help solve those pain points. If a prospect puts you on the spot and says, why would we choose you? What do you guys do differently? Or they ask you a technical question, don't put pressure on yourself. This is actually an opportunity to leverage the fact that you might not know to set the meeting. One time when a CEO put me on the spot earlier in my career when I was at Google, I told him, you know what, Mark? I don't want to do you and your business and our business a disservice by trying to pitch you on why you should go with us and talk about technical features that are honestly a bit over my head currently. I'd love to set up a meeting with you and some of our best technical resources to get in the weeds and align on what you're trying to achieve and some of our technical capabilities and differentiation so that we really maximize the conversation and tailor to what you're looking for. Are you free next week Tuesday, perhaps at 1 o'clock. You are able to leverage the fact that you don't know to use that as an excuse to set up a meeting with resources that will be able to help provide more insight. Regardless of how knowledgeable you are today about the product, there's no excuse. You can still find hooks to set the meeting and use not knowing to your advantage. One more line I wanted to throw in there that I use to set meetings during my Oracle days is useful if you sell at a large enterprise company that has a wide breadth to their technology portfolio. When I was selling Oracle database or cloud technology, I might say, Jim, I noticed you invested in NetSuite, which is a part of our broader portfolio. And the reality is there's so much breadth to what we do at Oracle and so much breadth to the types of companies we help that we really don't know what we don't know in terms of how we could work together until we have a deeper conversation around your business objectives and your current state. And I'd love to set that up. And if after that conversation you feel like it was a waste of time, let me know. You can tell me to take a hike and I definitely will. But what do you say? Can we find some time next week, maybe Thursday at 3 p.m.? Man, I love making up these hypothetical days and times, but you get the point. At a big company, you can lean on the breadth of your capabilities, and not knowing what we don't know in terms of how we can work together till we have a further conversation to be a hook to have a meeting with more senior resources and then explore the opportunity. In strategic enterprise sales, when you're selling complex solutions, the reality is you do have to have a further dialogue and back and forth conversation to really qualify the fit. And one final thing I will throw in there to this point is by reducing sales pressure and admitting that, hey, maybe at the end of this conversation there might not be a fit and you can tell me and that's okay and I'll leave you alone. That can be powerful. It reduces sales pressure and it leads to a customer being more likely to taking a meeting with you. And my final tip to you as a new SDR ready to take on the world and launch your career as an SDR is to realize that sales is a roller coaster ride. There are ups and downs and you will be tested in your career. I know multiple keynote speakers and best-selling authors like Mark Hunter and Jamal Reimer who were fired multiple times, both of them were, for underperformance. But they didn't give up on themselves. They knew what they were capable of. They believed in themselves. They got back up in the saddle and kept going. They kept charging forward. And these guys became the top keynote speakers in the industry. Jamal Reimer is the author of Mega Deal Secrets, and he closed $50 million deals at Oracle. This was a guy who was previously fired for underperformance multiple times. When you are tested early on in your tech sales career, do not be discouraged. Push through the valley of despair, knowing that there are brighter days ahead of you. You just need to keep improving little by little. Every call is a new opportunity. Every outbound touch and email is a new opportunity. Keep shooting shots and embrace and surrender to an irrational and unrelenting persistence, even when there is no indication that success will ever come. Because your ability to fail forward and endure failure and learn from it, get back in the saddle and keep going, your ability to keep pushing through even when you're getting no return from your efforts, having faith that things will turn out positively in the end will determine your success in tech sales and in life. On this path, you can fail miserably and then bounce back and succeed gloriously. There are abundant opportunities out in the market and always will be. Tech sales is a space that's dynamic, always evolving, with an upside that is nearly limitless. And on this path, with enough persistence, the impossible becomes possible, and you can ride this wave to heights that you could have never imagined. I hope you guys are encouraged by this video. I hope you're fired up. I hope you have clarity on how to hit the ground running as an SDR and how to launch your career to maximize your trajectory. You are capable of big things, and if you're looking for some support along the journey, check out my Tech Sales Accelerator curriculum, particularly my SDR Success Blueprint. I've got SDRs at Oracle, Snowflake, other top companies like Series D startups that are going through this curriculum, going through step-by-step how to understand the SDR role, where to focus your efforts, prospecting principles that work, how to outbound, cold call, cold email, how to run discovery calls, and even tips to be promoted. It's thorough, so if you're interested, that is linked in the description of this video, and I will throw in some complimentary coaching as well. And if you're someone who wants to get into tech sales that doesn't know where to start, I have a whole Tech Sales Accelerator collection that's 8 courses that includes the SDR SDR Success Blueprint as a part of it that you can check out in the description of this video and at techsalesaccelerator.com. To your success in tech sales and in life, happy selling, happy living, and we'll see you in the next one.